Private members' business. Notice number 1, Fair Work Amendment prohibiting discrimination based on location Bill 2015.
I call the member for Dawson.
Mr Speaker, I present the Fair Work Amendment prohibiting discrimination based on location Bill 2015 and the explanatory memorandum. And I move that the bill be read a second time.
Just if the member for Dawson just waits, I'll call the clerk.
First reading a bill for an act to amend the Fair Work Act 2009 and for related purposes.
I now call the member for Dawson
Thanks,
to move that the bill be read a second time.
I move so. Thank you, Mr Speaker. Australian culture dictates everyone deserves a fair go. That cultural belief is reflected in anti-discrimination legislation. And what's happening now in mining communities of Central and North Queensland is anything but a fair go. The 100% fly-in, fly-out workforce practices at Daunia and Caval Ridge mines have devastated local communities. Highly skilled and experienced local workers are locked out of local employment opportunities because they live too close to work. For example, a search for Mackay and the Coalfields jobs on Seek this morning reveals a number of jobs available, such as this advertisement for a production superintendent, which is great news if you have the right skills and experience, as long as you don't live anywhere near the work site, because the ad stipulates, quote, to be eligible to apply for this role, you must reside within 100 kilometres of the Brisbane airport. Now, such a secure lockout of local workers has had a devastating effect on the regional economy, especially in towns like Moranbah and nearby centres like Mackay. Firstly, we witnessed a spike in unemployment. Secondly, we witnessed the fallout of that unemployment, the depression, despair, family breakdown, I've got to say mental health issues, suicide, and then desertion. In Mackay, where homes were once virtually unobtainable, couldn't get them for love or money, this morning there are more than 1,200 vacant homes for rent, not to mention the empty homes not advertised or not for rent, which at some calculations is upwards of 4,000. The resource industry downturn has been exacerbated by these 100% fly-in, fly-out operations, a situation that should never have been allowed in the first place. Unfortunately, the Bligh Labor government in Queensland either failed to consider potential future scenarios, or it just didn't care when they approved 100% fly-in, fly-out operations at the Daunia and Caval Ridge mines. It was also unfortunate, I have to say, that the Newman government failed to take action to counter this geographic discrimination. But worse was to come, because despite promising as one of their key election commitments to end 100% fly-in, fly-out practices at existing mines, the Palaszczuk Labor government appears to have broken that promise. Before the Queensland 2015 election, Labor's policy document on this issue specifically said it would end existing 100% fly-in, fly-out operations near regional communities within 100 days of government, which no doubt attracted plenty of votes from the most affected regions. But more than 300 days after the election, they have walked away from that promise with the release of a parliamentary report done after an inquiry was conducted, and that report specifically states that already approved mines will be exempt from all of the recommendations that they have in that report. Well, this bill seeks to restore the fair go for local workers by using the existing framework that's designed to ensure everyone has a fair go in the workplace. This bill will amend the Fair Work Act to specifically say that employers cannot discriminate against potential job applicants on the basis of where they live, other than in cases where living locally is an essential component of being able to perform the job. The Act already prevents discrimination on other grounds such as gender, race and religion. The bill is simple and effective. It uses the same framework that's proven to be effective against other forms of discrimination. The framework allows flexibility to use FIFO where needed. When the resource industry recovers, workers may need to be sourced from elsewhere, but locals can never ever be specifically excluded. This bill would not have been necessary had the employer shared our cultural ideal of a fair go. Now, BMA, which operates Daunia and Caval Ridge mines, was given approval by the previous Labor government to use 100% FIFO, but that doesn't mean that they still have to use it. If BMA wanted to share the ideal of a fair go, it would remove any requirement about where a worker must live from its recruitment ads. It would also reconsider its policy of casualising the workforce, which goes hand in hand with FIFO. The simple knowledge that locals are allowed to apply for local jobs would immediately inject some much-needed confidence into local economies. North Queenslanders are a resilient bunch, so are Central Queenslanders. They're capable of rising to any challenge. They have the skills and experience to drive our national economy forward. All that they ask is a fair go.
Is the motion seconded?
I second the motion.
I'll call the member for Capricornia.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. In Central Queensland, there is an alarming issue at foot of which every MP should take serious note. As my colleague, the member for Dawson, has noted, workers living in the Capricornia coal belt, our nation's biggest coal production area, are being shut out of local jobs because of where they live. The blame lies fairly and squarely with the Australian Labor Party, backed by the powerful CFMEU. In Queensland, the Labor Party introduced a policy of allowing 100% fly-in, fly-out workers on 2 critical coal mines in Capricornia. Job advertisements for 100% FIFO positions declare that applicants must live within 100 kilometres of Brisbane Airport or Cairns in order to obtain work west of Rockhampton and Mackay. That means any local worker trying to support their family at Moranbah, Dysart or Nebo and other Capricornia towns are not allowed to apply for jobs here, even though the mine may be as little as 15 minutes' drive up the road. This Labor Party law smacks of discrimination. It has the hallmarks of apartheid system based on the postcode of where you live. If apartheid rules were not good enough for South Africa, then they cannot be good enough for Central Queensland workers. Labor's policy means we have suitable, skilled people living next door to a work site who are outlawed from applying for a job here. The impact of Labor's 100% FIFO rule is hurting the survival of our local towns. If people can't get work and live in local communities, they simply leave. The consequence is that small business suffers, schools lose resources and other community services begin to dwindle. In short, our small mining towns are dying. The bill that we, as LNP National Party MPs, present to the House today will help these communities. Our bill aims to amend the Fair Work Act, prohibiting discrimination based on the location of your home. We support the motion to amend the Fair Work Act of 2009 with Amendment 3-51-A titled Discrimination based on where a person lives. It states an employer must not take adverse action against a person who is an employee or prospective employee because of where that person lives. Mr Speaker, last week the Queensland Labor government ended its inquiry into the practice of 100% FIFO policy. Queensland Labor is a state government that does not want to man up to the fact that it was Queensland Labor that introduced this despicable law in the first place under former Premier Anna Bligh. Their recent inquiry was led by union activist and MP Jim Pearce and overseen by several Labor Party mayors in Central Queensland. It suggested that 100% FIFO is not accepted by anyone in regional Queensland, but they can't unwind the mess their own party created because it's enshrined in contract legalities. Ironically, the Queensland Review recommended changing the Anti-Discrimination Act so mining companies cannot refuse to employ workers based on where they live. It's ironic because I told the CFMEU and Jim Pearce that is what the federal representatives were already actively seeking to do. When I spoke at a community forum on jobs and the impact of 100% FIFO in Mackay, hosted by the CFMEU and Jim Pearce, I told them that I and the member for Dawson were already drawing up such a bill. Our bill today aims to make it illegal for companies to lock people out of jobs based on their home location. The bold private members bill seeks to amend the nation's Fair Work Act 2009 to prohibit discrimination against workers based on where they live. This bill intention is to ensure that Central Queenslanders can apply for Central Queensland jobs in our coal mining sector without discrimination. I commend this bill to the House, and I urge this parliament to stand up for what is right to safeguard families, small business, services and a person's right to at least apply for local jobs in our inland regional coal towns. Thank you.
The time